This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Ensign's Chair. So, this episode, we're going to get a lot done on the Big Bird. I know the first two episodes have been kind of slow, just kind of working things out. But once I got the lighting figured out and how I want to get things done, everything's kind of falling into place now. And I'll just show you real quick where we're going to be at the end of this. So, this is, I'll slide over into the picture. This is where we're at now, at the end of this episode anyway. And you can see I've got the engines figured out back here, and we're going to talk more about that here as we go through the episode. So without any delay, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, so when I left off last time, I pretty much had the neck and the bridge section assembled. And I've gone and added that photon tube that was missing last time. So this is pretty much completely assembled, and I've actually worked out the lighting on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the lighting as it appears, and then for those of you that are interested, I will show you how I got to that point. So let me turn everything on here. Plug this in, and I'll turn this light off, make it a little easier to see. But I don't have this glued in place yet. This is all just pretty much fitted into place right now. So, but there you can see my bridge lighting, and like I said, never mind that light leaks. This isn't attached yet. I've got to attach this. I got to do a little bit of light blocking on that. But you'll notice that I don't know how it's showing up on camera, but you'll notice that the lighting for the internal lighting is more of a yellow color. Now, when I look at pictures of screen caps from the films and that, it looks to me more like the internal lighting is more of a yellow. If we can assume that the external lights like this one and the one on the bottom here are a whiter color, this looks yellowish to me. So I decided to do a little bit of a yellow color. I'll tell you more about that when I open this up and show you. But that's how it appears. And here is the front. You can see that red ring on there. Still got a little bit of light showing through in the back. I got to do a little more light blocking inside. Let me try to focus this a little bit. All right. So you can see that red ring, how it's lit up. And I've got my board hooked up for the photon firing. So let me find my button here. Let's take a look at that. And what you're seeing is you see I swapped out that red bulb for a yellow. So you get just a little bit of an aura. The aura isn't showing up as well, probably because it's too bright in here. There it goes. You can see it a little bit though in there, right when the photon flashes. So that's my setup for this. That's what I've gotten done. As far as the lighting, I think it's pretty much complete there. But I'll show you what I got here. Let me unplug this, because otherwise when I take this cap off, it's probably going to be blinding. Maybe not too bad. Turn this light back on, might help drown it out a little bit. But you can see my light setup in here. I've got, my intention was to light this using standalone LEDs. And the problem is the LEDs I got that were marked as yellow were actually more of an orange. So what I did instead was I used two low density, these are low density LED strips because I don't need to use the high density inside. But these are low density LED strips. I used a warm white, and then what I did was I took a drop of my Tamiya clear yellow, and I just put a drop of Tamiya clear yellow over each of the diodes on the LED strips, and that's what's giving me my yellow tint to my lighting on the inside. So I like the way it turned out. It looks pretty good to me, and I'm happy with it, so I will be leaving it like that. The other thing I've got is I've got the individual LEDs on top, 3mm, and I've just run my wiring on the top to the back section here. I've still got to do a little bit of gluing these in place to make the wiring stay in place. Like back here, this needs to go in more. But so I've got this one on top, and then I've got a LED strip with two bulbs facing towards the front, because the problem I was running into when I tried to run it just lengthwise on the bottom was I wasn't getting decent lighting through these ports, these windows on the front here. So what I did was I angled these so that they're shining towards the front. Now I get better lighting through these windows on the front, and I've got this one LED facing backwards that still continues to help light the rest of it. So that's my lighting setup for the internals. For the front part here, what I did was I went into Tinkercad and I made a reflector that fits in here. You can see there, and you can see part of it here. And what that does is it allows these, I've made it to where I can mount, it looks like it's getting kind of washed out, can't hardly see it. Maybe you can see right there, you can see where I've got, you can see two of the bulbs here, and then there's another one further up right here. I made it to where I can mount the 3 red LEDs to light this deflector or this dish in the front, my red ring, so that way I get lighting around the red ring like I need it to be. So that helps kind of light that up. And then I've got the other part that I talked about for the photon emitter, where I've got the yellow LED and the green LED running through here. So that's how I've got my light set up. It's worked out pretty well. Get this dish in place here. So I like it. I think it's going to work out just fine the way it's lit up. So that's what I'm going with. But that's how I've gotten to that spot, this point as of now. I've got all my wires running through the neck back here, and let me unplug this a second. Just to show you, I did change, you can see all these lights over here that I've cut off of this board. I don't need them. I'm not going to run my internal lighting off of the control board. For one thing, I'm using more LEDs than what the control board has set up on it, and I don't want to overpower the board. So I've just cut all those leads off for the internal lighting, because I'm going to actually run my internal lighting and all directly off a 9-volt power source. So I don't really need it, so I just cut it off there, and basically all the board is powering now is my effects. So I still got to work out how I'm going to do these. I've got an idea, but I got to test it and see if it's going to work. How I'm going to work these out for my warp effect when I get to that point. I do have most of the back section ready. I do have to do some final painting on the underside, but the top section here, I've also installed my lighting for this. Let me see if I can move this out the way. And I posted some pictures of this. These are the lenses. You can see the lenses I made for this, because I didn't want just the bulb sticking out there. So I made these little lenses, again in Tinkercad, and printed those up. And let's see, where is my battery here? All right, so you can see how that's going to light up. So I think it's going to light up real nice. It looks about right as far as intensity, so it's not overly bright. But so I've got that part ready, and I've got to install a warm white bulb up here, and that's pretty much it. And then I've got to, other than that, I've got to install again an LED strip in here with that yellow tint to it for all these lights, or all these ports, all these windows on the front here. So I am going to be working on that section, and once I get a little bit of that done, we will come back and take a look at where I'm at. So stay tuned. All right, so here's where I'm at now. Now this is all just test fitted in place. I haven't glued anything as far as this back section yet. What I did was I did seal up the bridge finally, and I've got my neck connected to the lower section of the main hull. So let me plug this in so you can take a look at where I'm at with my lighting. And there we go. Let me turn this light off, might make it a little bit easier. And you can see where I'm at here. That's all my lighting. So all my bridge lighting is done. I do have to put a little diffusion piece over top of the LED strip for this section here, because I do get some bright spots out of this. The bridge section actually turned out pretty well without having to put any diffusion in there, but this back section I am getting quite a bit of bright spots through these windows. So I'm just going to get a piece of styrene and put it over it to kind of diffuse the light a bit. That way it won't be so bright in spots. But you can see, I guess, these navigation lights. I don't know what Klingons would consider them, but I've got those in place. Now these are all pre-resisted, I'm assuming for about 470 ohms. They came pre-resisted when I ordered them, but I have added an additional 10K resistor just to tone them down so they're not so bright. Because there should be, in my opinion, a difference between these lights and the spotlights on the front of the wings. The front of the wings I'm not going to add the additional 10K resistor, but for these, all these lights here, and then there's two on the underbelly. Let me see if I can turn this without everything falling apart. And you can see that light there, and I've got the two on the underbelly here. They're coming up a little bit pinpoint bright, a little more bright on camera than they are in person, but I think they've toned down pretty nicely, so I'm happy with it. Let me kind of break this down a little bit. You can see too, you see how those red lights are coming through on here. I like the way that's lighting up nice. I did not add any resistors to this, so this is just these red lights. These red down lights in here are just to what I'm assuming to be 470 ohm resistors. They should be somewhere close to that. I do have a couple little light leaks on the underside of the bridge here that I'm going to have to fill in, but that shouldn't be a problem. So everything's looking good. I have got some of these back parts. There's 3 parts that go across here that are printing right now, and then I've got my or they're not printing, I painted them, I primed them, and I'm getting ready to paint them. So when we come back after this next break, I should have these in place, and I should be about ready to put my engine guard in place, but I will not be attaching this piece yet, because I do need to do my wiring in here. I still need to be able to get to my wiring, because when I put my wings on, I'm going to need to get to the wiring, and basically I will leave this part loose. It kind of snaps into place pretty decently, so I wasn't able to just do magnets on the bridge part like I wanted, because it wouldn't have sat down in place. But this piece here, I'm thinking I might be able to rig something up to where I can remove this in case I need to get to the internals in here and work on them. So we'll take a look at that when I get to that point. But let me break this down for you and get back to where I was so I can show you how I got to this point. And these, like I said, nothing's glued in place. I just had these kind of sitting in place to test fit them. I do recommend test fitting your parts before you glue them, and maybe even test fitting several sections together before you start gluing anything there. That way you make sure that all the parts kind of fit together the way they should. Haven't really had any fitment issues with this model. They did very well in designing this, and it fits together really nicely. There's only really one issue that I've had, and that is with the fitment of the LEDs. Now, it's supposed to be made for 3mm LEDs as far as I know, but most of them have fit in place. The 3mm LEDs I've just been able to put in place, and they've been fine. Oh, my video screen is acting a little weird. So let me check on what's going on my video screen, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, everybody, sorry about that. Not sure what was going on there. That's the first time I've ever had that issue pop up. So looks like it's all fixed now. So, but what I was saying was I haven't really had any problems with the LEDs fitting to where they're supposed to, except for a few spots. One was up here at the top of the bridge dome. The hole is too thick for the bulb to fit flush, and actually it's supposed to stick out the top just a little bit. And all these, they should the 3mm bulb should stick out just a little bit. And I had a problem there, and I had an issue here, and I had to actually thin the hole here and here to get those LED bulbs to stick out just a little bit from the hole. So otherwise they were sitting recessed in the hole and they didn't look right. So I had that, and I also had the same issue on the sides, both sides here. The hole's just too thick. And actually, since I had already glued most of this together before I realized that, what I actually had to do was take my Dremel and remove the bezel from around the end of the LED, and that let me push the LED in just a little bit further, just far enough to where it would stick out of the hole like it should. So that's all fixed. That's all been addressed. And then there's a couple of holes where I've had to actually take my one of my files that's round shaped and kind of work out the hole a little bit more for the LED to fit in there. But no big deal. Other than that, everything else has gone together smoothly. As you can see, I've got my neck attached to the lower part of the hole, and I've got all my wiring run out the neck into the lower part of the hole, and that's basically where I'm looking to put my control board. Eventually put my control board and everything in there. And this is the hole for the mounting rod. I'm probably going to use a larger mounting rod than what this hole is, but that's no problem. I can drill it out later and get that figured out. So because I'm going to need a good size hole, I've got several wires that I want to run down. The control board itself will be mounted in the hole here. However, the soundboard and speaker are going to be mounted in the display stand. So I've got 3 wires there that I've got to run down. I've got the 2 power wires that are going to have to run down that tube, and in addition I've also got I don't recall, there's another wire here that I'm thinking I might run down that, but I need to run down the pair of wires for the control switch so I can activate the photons and the disruptor cannon. So that's all got to be run down the tube, so I need a little bit of room. That might be big enough, but I'm going to use a mounting rod that's a little sturdier, because this model is getting a little bit of heft to it now the further I get along into it. But so I've got that all assembled. I'm working out my wiring. I've got this the upper hull piece will just slide into place here, and at some point, as soon as I'm confident that I've got access to where I need to get access to finish up my wiring, once I put my wings on, I'll go ahead and I'll start gluing this down, and I'll start getting the rest of this together. My next step, there's a couple pieces, like I said, that go on the back here. I'm going to start working on getting my engine, my warp engines worked out. I've got the frames that I painted that are drying now. And then I've got the inserts that I've got to paint as well. So the upper one I'm going to paint with a clear red. And the lower I'm going to paint with probably a clear orange, or I may do a yellow-orange mix. I've got to look and see what I've got to do to get that close to screen accurate. The screen version looks like it's got a little bit, maybe a slight tinge of orange to it as well. So when I get to that point, I'll figure it out. I'll mix up some, and I'll do I've got an actual one that I printed up before that I messed up, and I'll do some test painting on that before I actually paint this part. So I'll get it worked out that way, and I'll let you know what I come up with. I've got a set of my baffles here now to get ready to start putting on here. One thing I'll suggest when you start putting your baffles on is where is it? Just get you a piece of sandpaper to make it a little bit easier on you, and just sand down these tabs here and here just a little bit, because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to put these in these slots And then also, if you need to remove them for whatever reason, it's easier to pull it, because if you leave them the thickness that they're at and you don't do anything, once you put them in place, they're a little bit hard to come out and you risk breaking them. So I would sand down the bottom edge of these. Also, it's going to let you get just a little bit of flex. I can put this one in place, although this isn't for this side, it's actually for the other side. But once I get that in place, it's going to give me just a little bit of flex to where I can adjust this part once I get, right now I've got my the jigs reprinting because they've been sitting for a while and they got broken just laying around. So I got to reprint them. They're reprinting now. Although I could probably do this without the jigs, I'd rather have the jigs just to make sure I get the proper spacing on these. And we'll see how much of a need I have for them. But that's my plan right now, is I'm going to start working on getting these baffles in place on the upper hull. And once I get good, decent way through that, we'll come back and we'll take a look. Stay tuned. All right, so here's what I've come up with. I've been working on these baffles, getting these installed. And here's what I come up with as far as the easiest way I've found so far to get these installed. Now, it calls for, I believe, to put in a 3.5 rods and a 2 millimeter rod. If you try to do that and then install these plates, it's just, I don't see how it's done that way. So what I've started doing is I'm just using the 2 millimeter rod for now, and then what I'll do is I'll come back with the 3.5 and check the other two holes just to make sure everything's lined up properly. But what I'm doing is I'll take each baffle, and I had mentioned about sanding these down. Now, I was using sandpaper, but I found it easier just to, and quicker just to use my Dremel. So this is going to be loud for a second, but just give me a moment. And that's basically all I'm doing. I'm just removing just a little bit of material just to make it a little bit easier to get these to seat down in there. I may even have to take a little more off. But then also what I'm doing is I'm taking my round file here and I'm just reaming out this hole just a little bit. I'm not really making it larger. I'm just making sure that it's got nice smooth edges for this rod to come through, or to slide through. So just open up just a little bit. And we'll put it in place. And I don't know if you can see, but my rod is sticking out right there. We'll get this in place. And these can be a little, these ones in the front seem to be a little more finicky about dropping into place. I've got just a small hammer just to tap them lightly into place. And then what I found, if I've done this right, usually I can get that rod just to slide through without too much force. So it also helps too to put a little bit of 3-in-1 on that metal rod when you're trying to push it through. It helps a little bit. So probably put a little bit of 3-in-1 or something else on there to help that rod kind of slide through these a little easier. Otherwise, it starts to bind up a little bit and it just gets a little bit harder to push it all the way through. So, but that's basically what I've come up with, and it's working so far pretty well for me. Let me do another one here. Had just a little bit of a high spot there where my supports had attached to this piece, so I just took it down a little bit. Not too worried about the appearance of it because you're not really going to see it once it's installed. So got that. Ream this hole just a little bit. And slide it into place here. I said these ones in the front here have been just a little more finicky about going into place. There. And again, rod passes right through, very little force. So that's working out pretty well for me. So that's the way I'm doing it. You know, so I'm sure other people have other ways that they've been doing it, getting these installed, but that's the easiest way I found so far. And like I said, I've got the 3.5 millimeter rods. The only issue is that I'm probably going to have to ream those two in order to get these to slide through there properly. So we'll see. I may not even need to use those to get this to line up. You want to make sure these seat all the way in the front. They're all the way down. So if they're not, sometimes I've found if they're not seating all the way, I just take it back out, and I'll just sand it a little bit more along this back edge here, because that's usually what's keeping it from seating all the way. These back ones, if I don't keep a hand on these back ones, you'll find that they like to try to slide out of place. So, but there's our rod all the way through. So we know we got that lined up, and as long as these are seated all the way in the front, those 3.5 should be lined up as well. But like I said, I'll double check them. If I got to take these back out and ream those a little bit more to get the rod to fit through, then that's what I'll do. But anyway, I'm going to continue to work on this, and we'll come back and take a look in a little bit. All right, so you see I've got these baffles in place. I've got jig 2 holding them spaced out properly. And what I'm going to do is when I'm ready to, let me take this piece off. I just kind of put this in place just to get a visualization of it. What I'm going to do is once these once I'm ready to put these in, I'm going to come in with some of my extreme power thin, my thin CA glue, and I'm going to let it run down into where these are seated on the top and on the bottom here. And I'll let that set up, and then once I take this jig off, these should pretty much stay positioned where they're at. So, but before I can do that, I've got to pull these back out. The reason why, let me turn this light off. Well, let me plug this power in first. I'll turn this light off, and let's take this off so you can actually see it right there. You can see the light bleeding through the baffles here, and that's because this is all open on the inside. So what I did was I went in Tinkercad and I made a plate that should fit to the shape of this. Now it might be a little hard to get in here because I've already glued this in. It would definitely be easier to do before I put the bottom baffle attachments in and all that. So in the future builds I'll be able to do that, but this build I'm going to have to work a plate in that's going to block off so I don't get this light leak into the baffles here. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to take these baffles back off, which is fine. It's not that hard to put them on now that I've got it kind of worked out. I did get these 3.5 millimeter rods worked into place, and the only reason I think they want 3.5 millimeter rods on these is because on your wing baffle plates it's only calling for 3 millimeter rods, so that gives you a little bit of leeway through these baffle plates as far as that 3 millimeter rod sliding through. So one thing to mention, these baffle plates have to go in a certain order, and I actually I can't see one from here right now, but I actually numbered my baffle plates when I printed them, so that way I knew where they went, and because these have to go in a specific order to get this shape that you need. However, on the wing, these are all identical, and even from left to right, it doesn't matter. You can print up the same side for both sides and use them interchangeably. It doesn't matter. The only plate on these that matters is the one in the very front that's got the etching on it that we're going to have to do some detailing on. So you can see I've got these kind of spaced out. I had to print some more off because I apparently lost some. I did have some that printed out and were kind of deformed, so I didn't use them. So I've got some more printing off to get those done. And this, like I said, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to get that plate in place, and then I'll get these back into place, and we'll do some wiring work and see where we go from there. So check back with you here shortly. All right, so you can see I've got this pulled back apart. I've got my wiring pretty much done. I've cleaned it up a bit. It looked like a bowl of spaghetti in here when I first took this back open, but I've shortened up a lot of the wiring. I've glued down the wiring coming from the front here, so that runs in, and I've got most of my soldering done. The only thing I've got left to do is to solder these two leads for the lights on the upper part of the engineering hall. Other than that, I've got to wire in the wings, and I'll talk about that more here in a minute. So I've got all this done. I went ahead and I worked out my engine lighting. So what I've done here is, you can kind of see I've got 6 LEDs in total, and these are all running off the board because it's the board is what controls the flickering on the engines. But I've got 3 on the lower section. I use 3 orange, or 3 yellow. They're supposed to be yellow, but they look orange to me. So I use 3 yellow LEDs here, 3mm LEDs, and I use 3 red LEDs across the top here. And what I did to mount those, I printed up. So I love the 3D printer. I printed up these little strips here, about 2 millimeters thick, and it lets me just mount those 3 LEDs in there, and I was able to just glue this in place, and that's what's holding my LEDs in place. It keeps it nice and neat, and makes it easy to work on. So these are all glued in place, and I actually don't think I glued these yet, but I've glued them in place. I've done some blacking out with my tool up on the back of the LED so I don't get that flickering coming through any seams or that. And it's all set up. And let's take a look at the, I'll show you the lighting here real quick, how that's turned out. Let's see if I can flip this around. And where's my plug? I'll plug this in. Oh, I just can't get a hold of my plug. All right. There we go. You can kind of see how that's turned out. I think it's turned out pretty good. I'm turning this light out. And now that I turn the light out, it looks like my frame rate has dropped a bit, so now it doesn't look like this is flickering that much. Let's turn it back on. All right, and then you can see how the lights are flickering in there. So it turned out pretty nice. What I ended up doing here to get this lens color, I printed up the lens. First thing I did was I did a light and misting coat with my fine surface primer, Tamiya fine surface primer. I did that, just a light mist on it, just to kind of take away some of the transparency, because it was too transparent when I first tried to paint it. So I had to take the paint off, come back and mist it with a light coat of this. And then obviously for the red I used, I had some of this Model Master transparent red, and that's what I use. You can also use the Tamiya transparent red. I've had this and I kind of need to use it, so I went and used it. Turned out nice. If you look at the photos on my Facebook page, and actually I'll put the photo up. Let me put the photo up now. And you can see how bright red that turned out at first, and I really didn't like it. I think that just looks too bright. So what I did was I took some, I also had some black Model Master paint, and what I did was I put that in a cup and I thinned it out with my Mr. Color leveling thinner. I think it's Mr. Color or Mr. Thinner. I don't know. It's leveling thinner, and I used that to thin it out a lot to where it basically just made it into a tint. And I just sprayed light coats on here, hit it with the blow dryer until it was dry, and got it down till I got it to a shade I liked. And I like how it looks now. I like the way it turned out. I think it looks really good. The studio model has this more of a gloss finish, and I don't really like that. I don't think it looks as scale as toning it down a bit. So I've got this with a matte finish, and I think it turned out pretty well. And as for the yellow section down here, I did some test painting and decided it was definitely need to go with a base coat of yellow. So I started by spraying a couple coats of my clear yellow Tamiya here, my X24 clear yellow. And once I got that to where I wanted it to be, I came back over and I just sprayed a light coat of this X26 clear orange, and it just gave it just a slight orangish tint, which I think it looks like in the studio model. And I think it looks pretty good. I think it came out pretty damn close. So I like the way that turned out. It worked out well. I just came back over it with both of those with a light clear coat, a matte clear coat, and it turned out well. I'm happy with it. So all my other lighting is all done up here. I don't have any of this. Got the let me flip this around. My photon launcher is all in place. If I hit the button on that, now I have the speaker disconnected right now, so you won't hear the sound effects, but you will see the lighting effect, and you can see that yellow kind of ramping up. Let me turn this light out, see if it comes out any better. And there you go. So lighting's coming along real nice. I'm happy with it. So I am pretty much ready to seal this up at this point. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get this sealed up. One thing I want to mention though, if you're doing it this way, you want to make sure, because we still have to attach the wings. The wings have 2 spotlights on each wing that need to be wired into the steady on power. So basically what I've done is, where this is running, this cable here is the negative and positive that are running down, well, will run down through the tube into the base. Basically I run another wire off, another negative and positive wire off, and I'm going to run back here and just lightly glue in place, just tack it in place with probably some hot glue. And that way, once I've got this sealed up, when I go to attach those wings, I can run that wire from the wings in, and I can just easily access these wires to wire that into the power source. I'll do the same thing for where are they at? I'll do the same thing for the cannons, and I'll leave a wire coming off of these leads. I think it's this one right here. Coming off of these leads, I'll leave a negative and positive wire coming off, so I can easily get to that. Although this is probably going to be pretty accessible. I'm going to leave this back part loose to where I can access everything in here still. And so that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave little wires hanging out back here. That way I can get to this stuff and I can make those final wiring connections. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get these 2 wires connected. I'm going to get everything kind of wrapped up and get this together, and we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. I think we're at a good stopping point now. We've got the hull completely assembled. Let's take a look at it here. And you can see that red ring on the front. Let me see if I can get this photon to fire. I don't have the switch hooked up, but this should fire if I ground these 2 wires together. Let's see if it'll fire here. There we go. All right, and there you go. You see that ramping up effect of the yellow light and then the firing of the green. And it's turned out real well. All my windows are lighting up yellow, maybe a little orangish, but to me it's screen accurate. When I look at screen caps, that's what I see, is more of a yellow color versus the white of the marker lights that we've got here, top and bottom. And then there's one back here where my hand is. I may do a little more color of the green and gray panels down here. I don't have any real good shots of the underside of the film and studio model, so I'm going to have to kind of play it by hand and maybe do a couple on my own just to add a little more color down there. So but she's turning out real well. The colors are looking real good. We got the engines running back here, if the camera will pick it up. I've been having problems with it dropping frame rates at points, and you don't really get the effect of the pulsing engines. It looks like it's picking it up there for the most part. It doesn't pick up the yellow as well as it shows up in person, but you get the idea. So those are looking pretty good. I'm happy with it, and looking forward to getting this done. Hopefully when I come back on Christmas break, we can get this finished up and work on the wings. I've got one of the wings I started working on here, but having a bit of a problem with this seam, mainly because I didn't get the 2 where it's separated. I didn't get it lined up real well, and it's kind of off, and I'm not happy with it. I've got a Anycubic Photon M3 Max on order because it was a really good deal on them for Black Friday, so I went ahead and ordered one. So that's coming in, and on that I'll be able to print these wings in one piece rather than having to split them. So I'm pretty much going to just toss these wings. I may hold on to them for future just in case, but really it'd be a lot of work to get this seam to line up at this point because I didn't quite get it lined up when I glued it. So I've still got the baffles here, which I have not glued in place yet, so I could still reuse those. So it's not a big loss. It's a lot of resin to kind of lose out on, but I'll be happier without having to deal with this seam, being able to print this in one piece. So we'll get that done and start working on the wings, and hopefully I'll be off about 2 weeks for Christmas break. We should be able to get that wrapped up and done and pretty much have the model itself complete. And then I will just be having to work on the base, which I've got a couple ideas how I want to do the base. And we'll get into that next episode though. So thank you everybody for watching. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and then hit that little bell icon if you want the updates to come to you automatically. But again, thank you everybody for your support. Thank you for your feedback. Till next time, keep modeling.